Over the past years, the automotive industry has changed beyond recognition. We've seen since the pandemic and before a huge wave of investment, particularly in China. We've seen Japan in terms of battery technology falling even further behind. And we've seen Germany, who in 2015, if you've read the Financial Times this morning, uh, laughed at people predicting Tesla's rise and the rise of the Chinese, and are now, when you look at Porsche, which was the company that nobody ever believed would fall behind, has been faced with a failing Taycan and lots of challenges in keeping their brand profitable, but not only in China, but in the United States. So we this year have been looking not only from the point of view of CES and new technology and BMW's panoramic iDrive, but also during the Shanghai Auto Show at the plethora of vehicles, new technologies, HMI screens, connectivity, and everything else that Chinese manufacturers are bringing to the world, and driven by their own perspective of a market that's tough, a huge range of competition, and intense price competition, as well as now the Chinese government being concerned about lower prices, uh, potentially putting businesses at risk. The Chinese are going out to the world. And the United States is a whole other issue, which we're going to talk about. So we'd like to give you a perspective on East versus West. I mean, essentially, over the last, I'll say, 10 to 0 years, we've been faced with the advent of what is called the software-defined vehicle. And we can argue whether that is a new vehicle or whether software's always been there or whether it's a software-designed vehicle which has been built around the software, then adding the hardware, as Tesla started to do, and then the Chinese have done it at breakneck speed with the Xiaomi SU7 being developed in 16 months, or whether it's actually the need to adapt software and keep the mechanical and the hardware in the best quality as possible, as well as being faced with changing ownership models in the industry. The agency model, which has been tried in the United States and in Europe, has pretty much failed in its current form. But the competition faced by the Western car manufacturers, especially from the Chinese, as well as along with geopolitical uncertainty because of tariffs in the United States, because of import duties in Europe, because of the need to source batteries and the materials that go into them, whether it's lithium, whether it's new sodium batteries, whether it's solid state, whether it's the integrated vertical supply chains that people like BYD have. They're all challenges that have made it much harder for the traditional legacy companies to work today, as well as having to face up to the fact that customers are demanding ever more for ever less money and want a full digital experience. So why did we put together this material and look across the world at the changing industry? Well, we looked at the fact that OEMs and suppliers can not only no longer only rely on a one size fits all strategy for markets, but they're moving towards a strategy of localization. If you take someone like BMW with its over 6 billion euro investment in China over the last couple of years, or their investments in the United States, Spartanburg plant, which builds all of the X vehicles, you can easily see that there is a regionalization taking place, as well as looking very specifically at what markets are needed, as well as at export requirements. And that gives you the opportunity to look on the ground at various markets. So whether it's the United States, whether it's China, whether it's Europe as the three big blocks, whether it's South America or the Middle East or Southeast Asia, where we're supporting Chinese manufacturers at the moment to look at market entry and what they need to do to differentiate their product. It's all about ensuring that we offer practical foresight, clear strategic end games, practical technology solutions in order to move forward and to secure customer sales, whether of new vehicles or used vehicles. And then the all important residual values, which sales sales volumes sustain the market, increase sales volumes, increase residual value. Having the right equipment increases that, and those used in new car sales support then the financing of future vehicles, which enables even more sales. So we're very pragmatic in the way that we're looking at the world being put together. If we look at China specifically, yes, there have been well over 2 decades of state policy looking at innovation, looking at investment, deciding to get ahead of the West in terms of electric vehicle and battery technology. China does have the world's largest public charging network, and it's not just 3.2 million chargers, it's having them along the highways, it's having them around the cities. And if you look at a map of China, which I've seen on the wall of a major Western manufacturer in Beijing, you'll see that that electric charging network covers almost two-thirds of the country, and it's increasing. So there's an absolute governmental and industry commitment to electric vehicles. And not talking at the moment about the quality of those vehicles. Some are better than others. If you look at someone like BYD, it's at least 75%. It's nearer to 80% of its value chain is vertically integrated. That means from getting the materials out of the ground to building the batteries, which whereas they started, to actually building vehicles of a reasonable quality at a very good price, to now building with BYD's denser premium brand vehicles of an extremely good quality at less than the Western manufacturers, but for Chinese manufacturers at a vastly increased price when they're coming to Europe with the denser G9 and other vehicles. So they're offering cost leadership. They're offering very good battery technology. If you look at what BYD has said about their charging times and the rate of charge and the range that they're offering, or CATL has looked at and are offering that superior range in a 5 or 10 minute charging time, you'll see that the innovation that's happening there is not only on the vehicle technology, the propulsion technology, but it's also around the in-car experience. And they're differentiating that as we move forward. And then you look at someone like Xiaomi. I mentioned the SU7 already, the XU7, the YU7, excuse me, is coming as well. This is all about a car phone and technology manufacturer and smartphone manufacturer who said we can build vehicles as well. And that first car they launched in 18 months. I mean, literally from first design to being on the road. Now, yes, there had been an accident in China, which was under investigation, but more generally, Tesla has had that problem in the United States. And it's shown us that tech companies can leverage their software capability to accelerate innovation, to build new platforms, to hire in automotive design talent, and to create active technology integrated vehicles linked to your smartphone, as well as providing real price competition on cost and offering value for money. So when we talk about value pricing, that is real value for money with great technology. And vehicle quality is improving as well. But just like the Western manufacturers, that will take time. And Guoqiao, the pride in domestic brands, has really increased. If you look at the fall in sales of Audi or BMW or Porsche in the Chinese market over the last 5 years, you'll see the Western manufacturers have been reduced to less than 40% of the market, and the Chinese manufacturers are now dominating. And there's a real pride in what those manufacturers have done prior to, during, and after the pandemic. And digital lifestyles, comfort, being able to go on long journeys are things that Chinese customers value. The driving experience is somewhat secondary, but the Chinese manufacturers are looking now at the driving experience for the customers in the West. And if you look what Omoda, if you look what JQ of the Chery brand, if you look what other brands such as Chery Exceed, or if you look at what BYD is doing with its own brand and with Denza in Europe, and hopefully eventually they hope in the United States, maybe when there's a change of administration, then you can see that Chinese consumers see their vehicles as more than just transportation. It's part of their identity, but for the Chinese manufacturers to survive, they need to go west, so to speak, and west includes Japan. So what's their strategy? Well, yes, it's cost leadership to buy market share. It's what the Japanese did in the 1980s with Datsun before it became Nissan, before moving into more premium segments. It's innovation and supply chain control to control cost. It's digital innovation. It's AI model integration. Some of the technology I've seen in their vehicles is much more progressive than Western manufacturers currently. They really have overtaken us in that regard. And it's a global ambition. It's making made in China quality made in China. So that's where they're heading. If we then look at the localization issue, well, yes, it's due to tariffs if you look at the United States eventually, but it's also due to the EU. So if you look at BYD's planned factory, which they've already started building in Hungary, if you look at what they're planning potentially building in Germany, if you look at Omoda with its joint venture in Barcelona, then it's moving beyond just cost to understand customers. There's a lot of research work that we're doing and others are doing for Chinese manufacturers in those key markets. It's trying to build emotion. Brand differentiation is the key word here, and to communicate in innovation. And there's still a lot of work to be done there. And then it's creating local partnerships to ensure that they have the right partners in the right markets. I saw that BYD and JQ have just signed partners in Switzerland over the weekend, and they've gone through various markets, including the UK, which is very brand affine and brand open, apart from for the journeys. The German premium market segment. So Chinese cars have had first successes in the United Kingdom, some success in Germany, and they're expanding. So that's their strategy. If we look at Japan, the journey to digital excellence, well, they've come from a background. If you look at Lexus, if you look at Toyota, if you look at Subaru, of quality, of craftsmanship, of great quality control. But in terms of EVs, they really are behind the competition. That doesn't mean that they believe, as Toyota has said, as BMW also has said, that they should be EV exclusive. They're also looking at ICE, they're looking at hybrids, but they are way behind on EV development and EV deployment. So they've got a lot of catching up to do there. There are some cultural barriers around risk and about incrementally changing things, which stifle innovation. And the government's model is all around consensus, as it is in all Asian countries. But the Chinese have managed to break through that. And for the Japanese, that's still proving very, very difficult. And witness what Nissan is now doing, closing 7 out of 17 production plants around the world, trying to make more attractive technically savvy vehicles, and then looking at how they spread the cost of R&D. So they're even talking to their Chinese partner Dongfeng Nissan about building vehicles in Japan, but also building vehicles in Sunderland, which is the main plant for exports to the United States, for the UK, and for exports to Europe, and making lower cost vehicles in those markets in order to move ahead. And the pressure to transform Toyota in its joint venture with BMW doesn't just include EVs, it includes hydrogen fuel cell technology. So there's a hope that there'll be a mix of powertrain technologies, advance in vehicle quality, advance in changing the way that the Japanese source their batteries, not just from the Chinese companies, and also then, that's for geopolitical reasons, but also then looking at how they transform their own businesses. And whether that's Toyota going step by step and still being extremely profitable, or whether it's Nissan because of the unique situation that they're in, seeking to accelerate its transformation and its cost reduction, that competitive pressure, not just from the Chinese, will continue. So they're focused on EV adoption, yes, and government policies and investment are changing. They're moving towards increasing innovation and reducing the time to launch from first design to launch vehicles. And they're looking at quality at being a key issue that they can put forward in great software-defined vehicles, but Japanese build quality, and hoping to differentiate themselves from the Chinese and others through that. And they recognize through their Woven by Toyota mobility operation, but also generally through their Toyota connected businesses, that Toyota has to engage with younger customers, and all of the Japanese brands are focusing on that at the current time. So innovate, integrate, expand, focus on digital, and that's where Star can help. And where are they today? Well, yes, they are looking at profitability. If you look at Nissan, they're looking everybody across the Japanese companies, whether it's the Kairetsu with Subaru and Mitsubishi and Daihatsu with Toyota, or whether it's Nissan cooperating with other manufacturers such as Dongfeng Nissan, as I mentioned, or whether it's simply looking at where they make profitable vehicles. They're getting away from the we'll buy market share, which the Chinese, to an extent, are having to do. They're also looking at how we then sell more higher value vehicles and more features in the future. And yes, they want to go into technology alliances. They're talking to all sorts of people, including SoftBank, about investing more money into the automotive industry, especially around technology. And I expect to see a further wave of consolidation in Japan. It didn't quite work out yet with Honda and Nissan. Nissan may work it out with Foxconn of Taiwan, who are the people who build the Apple smartphone in India, in Vietnam, and in China. And strategic partnerships in batteries are key for EVs, but reducing those costs are key. So the Japanese will be looking for further partnerships in that SDV era. And then for Germany, well, I mentioned at the beginning that the Germans sort of laughed in 2015 at Tesla's rise and what was going to happen. They've recognized that the writing is now on the wall. They're making huge changes, including Volkswagen seeking to sell off some factories in Germany, potentially to Foxconn, potentially to BYD, and to others. The subsidies for EVs are no doubt going to come back. And affordability is a key issue in Germany as well. And you look at what the Koreans have done in Germany over the last few years, especially with their EVs. Both Hyundai and Kia, Genesis to a lesser extent, have done very well. Now it's about building the public charging infrastructure. It's about really balancing EV versus other technology, because we know the German EV market has gone down. Tesla has lost favor because of Mr. Musk's geopolitical association with President Trump's administration. Will that come back? We don't know. They've lost literally 60% of 70% almost of their sales in Germany. So EVs are not in the position that they once were, and there is a changing customer mobility access. Before, the Germans would rent a flat and buy a car. Now it's more about mobility. It's more about ownership. It's more about car sharing. And that will change the industry as well. So there's a lot of change to happen in German industry, which employs in the wider supply chain 1 in 7 still in those countries. And that's going to go down, that number. So there'll be extreme economic pressure and not just headwinds because of the Chinese or EV. So what are the Germans heading? They're looking at infrastructure to meet EV demand, albeit that it's reduced at the moment. They're looking at new subscription models, or the Germans still like to own their car. They're looking at software and UX design. They want to differentiate their brands, and look at what BMW is doing with the Neue Klasse, which is the software-driven vehicle that's starting with the iX3, but is going to spread across 40 new vehicles over the next 2.5 years. And then they're looking in their cooperation with Toyota, if you take BMW, at hydrogen for specific passenger vehicles, but mainly, as Hyundai is with its trucks, at hydrogen for commercial use. And if you look this morning in the Financial Times, Daimler Truck is considering leaving the Chinese market because they're not making money there, but expanding its hydrogen and battery joint ventures elsewhere. So there's a radical change coming to those manufacturers, whether it's passenger car or whether it's commercial vehicle. So for the passenger car EVs, yes, it's luxury design and feel. The brands in Germany, because of cost, still want to differentiate themselves. They need to build regionalized supply chains because relying on China for rare earths, for battery technology, for electric motors is not going to bring the success that they need, and they've been too slow at that. And they need to look at brand to brand and cross industry partnerships, right, to compete against the Koreans, to compete against the Japanese, who've done very well. Toyota Deutschland has been a consistently good seller, not as good as Skoda and Renault in Germany, but it's still been good, and to protect themselves against the Chinese brands. More digitalization. This doesn't mean updating your car in the dealership, and I think that's been the big mistake that VW and others have made in the past. This is seamless over-the-air transfer of information between the German driver's smartphone, whether they're a private driver or a business driver, and the business market is huge in Germany. Providing solutions to those business customers is a key strategy, not only for the German manufacturers and integrating automotive financial services, but also then for the Chinese and the Koreans as well. Software as a core IP is still something that I would personally say is far away from where they are, but connected digital experience, something that we at Star and others in implementation can help them with, is something that is going to make the difference and differentiate the brands to command those premium prices that are needed to pay those salaries in Germany and to keep utilization where it needs to be. So that's Germany. And then the United States is a whole other market in itself. It's really 4 markets in one. I won't talk about that today, but in the sense of tariffs, in the sense of geopolitically, what has changed since January and the new administration, all of the manufacturers, whether they're Germans manufacturing, BMW, their X vehicles, or Mercedes-Benz down in Alabama, they need to rethink their supply chain. What's regional, what's global, what's local, what comes from other markets in the world. They need to look at their pricing, and they need to look at how they go to market in the United States market, but also which vehicles they export. So there's a major review ongoing from a point of view of simple return on investment, return on capital employed. In terms of regional difference, yes, I mean, California loves EVs, but how widespread are they really? In general, the US market has shifted towards hybrids, and yet some customer groups in California, for example, where they love EVs, are buying Hyundais and Kias. They've had their best quarter and best half year that they've ever had, especially in the EV segment recently. But Americans drive huge distances. I mean, if you drive in Texas from Houston to Dallas, it's at least a 10-hour journey. They need that charging infrastructure to do that, and it isn't there today, which is why people are going for hybrid trucks, part electric trucks, and remaining with the gasoline or petrol trucks to meet their needs. And there are lots of different regional tastes. And then you've got the Chicago bit up to the northeast where, have a lot of snow in winter, you need four-wheel drive, and you don't necessarily want to be outside in freezing temperatures charging your vehicles. Or the same applies to most of Canada. So it's not just about the regional tastes, it's also about then what you do where and having that charging infrastructure for EVs, but at the same time providing the vehicles, which is why GM has surged in its share price more recently. Again, providing those hybrid and ICE vehicles that people need as well. Having the right mix is what's important here. State franchise laws protect dealerships. That's very clear. They're on a state by state basis. That doesn't allow a direct sale or digital sale model, but there is a way to collaborate with those major dealership groups, whether it's Penske, whether it's others, in order to make sure that you have the right presence in the right place to place your products. That applies to the Germans, that applies to the American automotive OEMs, but it also applies to the Koreans and the Chinese, who at some point will be coming to the United States, I have no doubt. And then the federal tax credits, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is being changed because it came from the Biden administration and President Trump is changing that. But actually having local battery assembly, local vehicle assembly to gain tax credits, to gain um, influence. Also, then, if you look at what goes into your smartphone or what goes into your electric vehicle and even ICE vehicles, right? There are a lot of chips. Really, we're looking at a software-defined vehicle which has got numerous control chips within it. And whether it's one central computer with various chips in, or whether it's two, or whether it's in a typical ICE car more than 50, you need those chips. And where are they coming from today? They're coming from Asia. The advanced chips are coming from Taiwan. You'll see why TSMC has built or is building two factories, and a third one is planned in Arizona because of the requirements of the current administration to have local components and especially semiconductor production for various industries. So all of that needs to be looked at in the round. And what does that mean? It means that supply chains need to be reconfigured. There needs to be more localization of production, which will create jobs in the United States eventually. There's no doubt about that. You need to look at your brand and your customer experience to keep those customers, especially if in the short term you need to narrow your product range because you may not, because of tariffs, be able to introduce all of the cars into the market that you once did. So there might be a focus and a shift to CPO or certified pre-owned or used cars. And then brand identity and reputation at home and abroad. Can American manufacturers or others who build significant amount of vehicles like BMW and Mercedes in the United States, or Kia and Hyundai, be seen to be the overseas brand or the local brand? So, and then gaining exports when you might be faced with retaliatory tariffs is something that needs to be looked at as well. So it's a huge amount of challenge around regulatory effects, which we at Star can help with, around brand differentiation, about digital experience, and about localizing supply chain. And together with our partners, we can help you look at all of those things. So if we look at EVs, what is it about then? Yes, it's joint ventures, it's localized, regionalized sourcing and manufacturing, it's technology sharing, especially with the software and tech manufacturers. I've no doubt, whether via Mexico, via Canada, or directly, that the Chinese EV companies will come with certain products to the United States. The only question is one, whether it's affordable compact EVs or whether it's larger EVs. Just as a contrast, the Leap Motor vehicle, smallest vehicle EV being marketed via Stellantis in the UK at the moment, is less than £15,000, including a charging card. So this is for a UK price, that's unheard of. I can imagine that might go for sub $10,000 in the United States, should it ever get there. And it would help Stellantis, having suffered from less sales in its very profitable or once very profitable Jeep brand, to bring that brand in. But that's not likely to happen under the current administration. So digital first customer experience is absolutely necessary, but regional productization and product manufacturing is absolutely important. And when we look at the political environment, made in America is critical. Commitments to local sales, local production, creating local jobs, as well as innovating for the customer and selling more vehicles is absolutely critical. Will everything be made in the United States? No, it won't. Does the value add need to be quantified to take advantage of the credits and to reduce the tariffs? Absolutely, it does. So what happens then? Well, we're looking at a number of things. Across the markets we've talked about, this means elevating the in-car and digital personalization experience. It's the user experience more than the hardware specs, but it's also which touch points do I have? Whether it's on my smartphone, whether it's about synchronizing and seeing what I see on my phone in the screen of the vehicle, I'll say in near real time, or whether it's having more buttons, more haptic switches, more dials, make the vehicle easier for me to use. The customer is pleading in the United States, in China, in Europe, and in the UK and elsewhere, and in Asia. Make my life simpler, give me the features that I need. Don't make it harder. That seamless integrated experience is very, very important, as is connectivity and utilizing AI to power personalization for Andrew. when he's looking to connect his smartphone to the car and looking for a new vehicle, and integrating that HMI, that human machine interface, to make it work for me personally is what's critical. Driving revenue with software and data. Lots of people talk about software monetization. None of the consulting firms have worked out how quite to advise their customers how to do that yet. So let's look at it from a product point of view. If we're building the software-defined vehicle, there are data sets in vehicle, outside of vehicle, customer data sets, pricing data sets, dealership data sets, regional sales data sets, which all need to be brought onto one platform. And STAR can help with that. Then how we use the data sets, subject to US regulations, subject to Chinese regulations, subject to European GDPR regulations, is then the key. So first of all, what data do we have? What can we use? How do we want to use it? What services does it allow us to bring to Cherry, to Andrew, to Mark, John, and Pauline, whoever that person might be, or to Mr. Jiang? It really doesn't matter, but we have to work out how we're going to make money, because as we've seen with EVs, there are less parts. Automotive legacy OEMs traditionally made money with parts, certainly profit with parts. If there are less parts to go wrong and software is being flashed over the air into vehicles to improve those vehicles, where is the revenue coming from to fund the next series of EVs or ICE or hybrid vehicles? So that's a big issue facing the manufacturers. So how do we use our software and our data to monetize while securing the agreement of the end user, whether it's a business fleet, whether it's Andrew, Cherry, John, or Sophia? So that's what we need to think about. Now, there are two examples of that. Building the unified data platform. Can we link all vehicle customer data? No, maybe that isn't wanted, but certainly bringing together data sets which make sense to drive value and create monetizable offerings for customers is absolutely key. And what is also key is looking at the predictive maintenance for the vehicle. So whether that is in the vehicle itself, as when various maintenance or services, even in an EV, need to be done, such as the brake pads are wearing, such as you need to think about changing your tires because the tire, having interaction with the car rather than just a tire pressure monitoring system is very, very critical. But also in the production process for the automotive OEMs. How do I know when robot number 42 is going to fail? Looking at that sort of predictive maintenance makes the company more efficient and saves money. So software and data can be in company, but you can also use AI to identify faults in a potential R&D or production process. But you can also look at it in the vehicle and say, how do I warn Andrew or Cherry as to what's going to happen to this car? So they're able to be proactive in changing things and not just react when a tire bursts. Scaling efficiency through smart platforms. I mean, this is really about reuse and automation, whether it's facing the customer or whether it's internal to improve efficiency within, let's say, the procurement system of the automotive OEM, where they're issuing tenders for major supplier bids, where they have to create those tenders, agree those tenders, look at the terms for those tenders, and when they get a plethora of responses, evaluating those tenders. It's about strategy, it's about process change, it's about engaging with partners, and it's about building the technology to optimize process, save time, save money, ensure that the right parts are delivered at the right time into the factory to build the car that Andrew or Cherry want. So that is a huge opportunity with AI, creating smart platforms, given the revenue, the cost, and the profit challenges that the industry is facing. And then where can we really help? So we're looking at the next generation customer experience. That can be personalized, it can be UX, it can be connecting the smartphone to the vehicle. It's not just about 3D or next generation HMI, it's about creating a real tailored user experience which makes my or your life easier. Then we look at product strategy and monetization and ecosystems and how we bring together data sets and technology, and then connected platforms and AI to improve the efficiency of the business. But also then it can be used in automotive finance for fleet management, for asset management, for making sure that fleets are maintained and serviced and contracted with in the right way, as well as internal to the OEMs I mentioned for the procurement and supply chain. So we're looking at three focus areas, if you like, and three areas which are the core of what we do, right? Accelerating time to market for connected experience for the customers, bringing value and offering sellable services to those end users, enabling monetization from both software and data, and the industry as a whole doesn't know how to do that yet. We have an idea how to make that work. And then reducing cost and complexity by automating processes. If we think about AI, everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon. We had deep learning in the 1950s and 60s. We had machine learning from the mid 1970s onwards. Now we're looking not just at chatbots, but how we use those technologies and develop them further for internal efficiency and for customer facing applications which make your and my lives easier. So we love that brand and spend more money with them. So that's where we are. We can bring you end to end expertise, but we can bring you selected strategy and innovation improvement. We can bring you product expertise and look at cost efficiency, but also we can build that technical platform which you need. So that's Star. Thank you very much. East versus West is not just a challenge, it's an opportunity. Weiji. Goodbye.